step to one side. You don't think it's a good idea, the trust coming in?
Yeah, I do. I think with regards to Marwan Kukash, I'm definitely not a hater of Marwan. I think he's, you know, a lot of people will argue that without Marwan, we would definitely not have been playing Super League. We may have been playing a lower league rugby. So he's definitely given us a stay of execution on that front. He obviously inherited he inherited the stadium deal and the new stadium. So fair dues to Marwan. He had a lot to contend with. He was probably badly advised early on as well. And I think Marwan's just run out of gas now. And in his own words, this season he's probably had a vote of no confidence in the fans, because at points the fans haven't turned out. And fair play to Marwan. After a lot of hoo-ha and talks of a rebrand, we are sticking with Salford, a club in Salford, and he's thinking outside the box. And now, hopefully, within a couple of weeks, we'll have had ratified a new structure and a board of trustees of local Salford business persons with a vested interest in the club and the community. And I'm hoping now the community, the fans can reconnect with the club, because there's definitely been a disconnect over these last 4 or 5 years, I think.
Yeah, talking about the fans making a stand, Dave, there's a new supporters trust being formed. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, in a nutshell, there was a supporters trust back in 2003 when the club got relegated, and they managed to raise 60-70 grand to assist the then chairman and John Wilkinson. But again, when Marwan came on board in around 2013, the trust began to fall dormant because Marwan didn't really see a need for it. He had a lot of money, and that's when that disconnect started, really. So all we've done really is relaunch the existing supporters trust. It's took a lot of work, but fortunately now, 2 weeks in, we've probably just a couple short of 300 members, considering we've only got 1,800 season ticket holders. Pretty good numbers in a fortnight. We've got a temporary board, and hopefully by the end of this year we'll have ran an election process. So we'll have a fully elected supporters trust ready for the 2018 season, and I'm hoping that it's the vehicle for dialogue with the club, and we can get the community back involved in the club, and hopefully, ultimately, increase attendances, and we can all watch great rugby at the AJ Bell.
Yeah, lots of positives at the moment, Paul. Hopefully 2018 will be another great one for Salford Red Devils.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah, I think we need to buy into that and get the supporters feeling like a sense of belonging to the club, because I think, like Dave said, I think my personal opinion, since we left the Willows and went to the AJ Bell Stadium, I think that seems to have been lost on supporters. I've spoken to a lot of old supporters over the last few months, and they feel the same way, really. That they've lost the connection with the club, really, and they don't really feel as wanted as they were. And I think that's probably had an effect on why crowds have dipped and things like that. So yeah, I think it's all positive. The meetings that I've been to so far, and what we've been to as supporters, I think they've been good. They've been very positive. And everyone wants the same thing, don't we? We all want Salford to succeed. Salford RLFC, the club we believe, the club we've been brought upon, and we want to see them succeed. And all right, those guys, perhaps we don't go every week expecting us to win trophies and win the grand final, but we just want our side to compete and have a side to be proud of. And I'm sure with this trust and the way things are going, we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, so this was Salford Red Devils, Devil in the Details season review. I'll hand you back to Mark and Tom now.
Right, thanks very much indeed for that, gents. Always good to hear from the lads at Devil in the Detail. They've been going, they're our podcast brothers, really, aren't they? They've been going about the same time as us, yeah. We've all grown together. Salford, Mark, we didn't get any additional fan reviews on that, but the lads have covered off in great detail what went on. The thing I would say about Salford is I picked them to finish around about 8th. They finished around about 8th, but the manner in which they did it is not what I anticipated. I didn't expect them to be as good as they were at the start of the season and then drop off quite so dramatically. I thought they would be average throughout the year. And it felt to me like they got to that stage in the season where they'd finished really high, great finish, cracking season, some really exciting stuff going on there. Great young coach, loads of positivity about the club, and then for some inexplicable reason almost, things just started to incrementally fall apart for Salford, and they finished round about where I expected to. Well, I don't, because I can't see that Watson would have changed anything dramatically around at the club.
Justin Carney went around about.
Justin Carney going though.
He's a winger.
Wingers, look, as good as he is and as rampant as he was, probably that's the wrong turn of phrase to use, but as rampant as he was, he's not irreplaceable, and they proved that because look who they replaced him with. I would argue that they improved upon Justin Carney by bringing in Manu Vatuvai, who was probably the highlight of their back end of the season, really, and you'd struggle to find one. So there was positivity around Salford, so I wonder if the wheels had started to be set in motion in the background for the Kukash departure and the changes that were coming, and maybe that's something that we haven't started to see sort of bubbling to the surface until now, because it's something that had happened behind closed doors, and maybe players knowing that certain guys were moving on and things were changing around the club, maybe that had an impact. Salford ended up where I anticipated they would, and if you were a Salford fan for the first 3-4 months of the season, you'd have been on cloud 9, wouldn't you? Because were it not for Castleford, we'd have been raving non-stop about the performances of the Salford.
Well, you can hear it from the guys in the review about the semi-final. Like their big day out was a semi-final at Warrington. It was a huge leap forward for something that they've not experienced for such a long time.
Yeah, that's it. And I think overall, you've got to say it's been a good season for Salford.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, well, I agree, but I'd say it's a season of two halves.
Yes, exactly. Well, it certainly is. Yeah, go on.
At the end of May, so halfway through the season roughly, they were second in the table. They'd won 12 of the 16 Super League games and were through at that stage to a cup quarter-final. They'd only suffered one bad loss, that was away at Catalan, but had several big wins, and they were the first team to have beaten Cat in the season in a narrow game. From the end of May onwards, it was only 2 league wins from 14. They fell at the cup semi-final stage. 9 of those 12 league losses, Tom, were by more than 3 scores, and it actually helped them end up with the most blowout losses of any side in Super League this season. A stat they still managed to keep the right end of, we talked about this all year, was errors. They had the least errors per game of any side in Super League, 10.5 per game, which was more than a full error below the league average. So, you know, they were definitely the best in that area of containing things. That may be linked to the relatively low risk game plan though. They put on a lot of set plays, but that's pretty much all they did, and the only real loose cannon kind of thing that they had was Ben Murdoch-Masilla in a way, and that was through hard running more than anything else. I mean, they were able to. So the low risk game plan, it also saw them being the lowest in offloads per game, which isn't surprising when you think about the whole picture together. They were playing entertaining stuff, but it wasn't seat of the pants stuff.
It was great structures.
They were able to be third in the list in clean breaks, so they'll be disappointed that they fell down to 5th in the total try amounts. Really, they didn't take all the chances, and that's something that fell away. They were taking their chances early doors. They were not taking their chances later on. Ben Murdoch-Masilla, he became the first Salford player to make the dream team since 2006, Tom. So that's really good. He was the top second row for tries and second top try scorer at Salford. He was also top 5 for busts and breaks among second rowers. So he was a powerful unit, and they're going to miss him.
Definitely.
Now he's gone.
Massively so.
Another Salford player I want to mention, and I hope he doesn't leave them, is Mark Flanagan. I think it's unfair that we missed him from our loose forward shortlist for the dream team, in actual fact.
Got to get Cuff playing there somewhere.
Yeah, well, and also I would have been arguing strongly to put him over Milner, and you wouldn't have had that, so there we go. But he had Salford's best win success, 12 wins from his 17 games. So when he got his season-ended injury, it was around round 19, I think, ish, and they won one game or something after that. Ridiculous level of performance. He was significant. It was a significant part, both as a ball playing forward, but more importantly in defence. He was one of the top defenders that they had in terms of tackles per game and tackle success. So he was really crucial, and he went away. I think that might be part of the explaining factor, as well as they started to lose consistency at halfback.
Yeah.
So they lost kind of their ball playing centre to the team. all around that same time, and Flanagan was a big part of that, big miss.
There you go, what might have been for Salford. Super League semi-finalists St Helens are up next, Mark.
Yeah, we were both pretty much spot on in terms of league for St Helens. I had them third, you had them fourth. They finished fourth in the top 8, went into that away semi-final. We both thought they would do well in the cup. I had them winning the cup, because I didn't think Matty Smith would be out
quite for as long
at that point and not quite get his fully going. Semi-final, you had them, but actually they were out in the first round. Who did they?
Do you know, I don't recall now.
Hull? No, Cass. They got battered at Cass, didn't they?
That's right.
Yeah, in the second half, Cass had one of them.
Had their 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think Rob talked about it earlier, actually.
There you go.
To think of it. Yeah, so we have a fan review winging in all the way from Tasmania, which he'll be doing, winging into Melbourne from Tasmania.
He's on his way.
Try and catch up with Wally Frogmore at the game if you're there, any SLP listeners. Yeah. But Wally Frogmore, take it away.
Hi, Frogmore here. I'd like to take a moment of your time to talk about the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Just kidding. Here to give the SLP Saints 2017 season review. I was going to plan this review ahead, but I got a mind blank trying to take notes, and I thought I'll just throw them away, much like the finals chances that we had by giving a silly penalty away. So to get along, we started the season with a close win over Leeds, but then dropped the next 3 games, thus beginning the inconsistency of a win-loss, win-run of what would turn out to define the Saints season. Not many, I suspect, would have picked the Saints to have made the semis, and they almost didn't, if not for some fortuitous results falling their way in the final month. We'll just skip over my prediction, where I said we would win the trophy. But that said, that was a teeny bit of bias that may have crept in there. Now, for some of the good things that stood out for me during the season, and they come in no particular order, the first thing that comes to mind is the Magic weekend. Now, you could just use that alone for the 45-0 scoreline that we ended up accumulating against Hull. But the main thing that stood out for me was the Makinson try. It was a 100-metre effort or close to, and he beat 5 guys in the process, which was my try of the year until moving on to the next game, which again, further in the season, just happened to be against Hull, with a fudge chip kick where he hit it up over the defensive line and Percival juggled it mid-air, and whilst the defenders were trying to push him out into touch, he somehow managed to twist and get the ball down. The next good thing that I would suggest would be the Ben Barber signing. Now, I can skim over this one because there's not really much that needs to be said. It's more, whilst we didn't see the dividends pay off, I feel after a full pre-season, 2018, we'll see the best of him. The final thing to speak about will be the Salford 25-24 win. What stands out to me on this one just happens to be, not only was it 24-8 with about 7 minutes left, so there was the good comeback there. The best part happened to be the Louis Karma, which led to the next best thing, the Matty Smith field goal. The other thing to check out on this game, and I can link those interested, just happens to be the Wish FM radio commentary for that particular moment. It's my favourite piece of commentary I've ever heard. Then moving on to the negative, or the things I'd rather forget about for the season, the main thing that stands out is the coaching changes. Now, getting rid of Cunningham was a good thing, but the disruption of the season could have possibly cost us a few extra points. In the end, it didn't really matter. We still made the semis. But that, again, it still plays into what I said in the intro, moving on to the next thing being inconsistency. The win-loss, win-loss. Not sure whether that plays into whether it was to do with the coach changes or the roster that maybe were being fielded at the particular time. I think it might have been a bit of both. Who knows? Talking about people being fielded that probably shouldn't have, a few players that stood out for me, but not for the right reasons. We had Dominic Peyru and Zeb Taylor, aka Spare Tyre, both Gold Coast Titan rejects. Could have given take on those, drop ball merchants, whatever. the main person for me I would like to see retire is John fucking Wilkin. The last bad thing just happens to be the name of the